दोस्तों नमस्कार। दोस्तों, आप लोगों को पंजाब क्राइसिस के बारे में या खालिस्तान कॉन्स्पिरेसी के बारे में पिछले 4-5 सीरीज से हम बता रहे हैं कि किस तरीके से एक अकबर रोड गैंग ने जरनैल सिंह भिंडरवाले को तैयार किया, उसको मास्टर बनाया और पूरा जो अमला इंदिरा गांधी का जो गवर्नमेंट है, उन्होंने किस तरीके से इस ऑपरेशन को, इस कॉन्स्पिरेसी को 4 साल तक लगातार चलाया। 1978 में आए थे, वो ऑपरेशन 1 था। 1978 में लोगों ने 13 अप्रैल 1978 को बैसाखी के दिन निरंकारियों के ऊपर आक्रमण करवाया था। उस समय पंजाब में अकाली दल की गवर्नमेंट थी। 1977 में इंदिरा जी हार गई थी, तो पंजाब में अभी कांग्रेस हार गई थी। उसके बाद अकाली गवर्नमेंट आई थी, वो उनको बर्दाश्त नहीं हुआ और उस चक्कर में इन लोगों ने पंजाब में अकाली गवर्नमेंट के खिलाफ एक साजिश के तहत एक मोर्चा खोला। इसके सूत्रधार वहां के उस समय के मुख्यमंत्री जैल सिंह हुआ करते थे, जो बाद में राष्ट्रपति बने। तो फिर 78 से लेकर के 80 तक ये लोग गड़बड़ करते रहे। 80 में इंदिरा जी वापस आ गई, जनवरी के महीने में इलेक्शन हुए और इंदिरा जी वापस आ गई, तो इन्होंने स्ट्रेटजी बदली। पंजाब तो इन्होंने जीत ही लिया था। पंजाब में दरबारा सिंह साहब मुख्यमंत्री बन गए थे, जय सिंह साहब को इन्होंने गृह मंत्री बना दिया था। अब जब 80 में वापस आ गए तो इनको ये लगा कि इसी चीज को कुछ आगे बढ़ाया जाए, जिससे कि सन 85 के जो इलेक्शन होने वाले जनवरी में, उसमें हमारे को जीत हासिल हो। तो उन्होंने फिर जो पंजाब की जो प्रॉब्लम है उसको धीरे धीरे बढ़ाया और जरनैल सिंह भिंडरवाले को इनडायरेक्टली मदद देते रहे, ऊपर से दिखाते रहे कि हम लोग उनके खिलाफ है, ये है वो होते रहे, जो हमने पहले कवर किया है। हमने ये भी कवर किया है कि 3 ऑफिसर जो इंदिरा जी के बहुत क्लोज थे, उसमें से एक फर्स्ट डायरेक्टर ऑफ R&AW रिसर्च एंड एनालिसिस विंग के जो फर्स्ट डायरेक्टर थे, काओ साहब, RN काओ। उसके अलावा क्या बोलते हैं, ये बी रमन रॉके ऑफिसर थे वो, और पीसी अलेक्जेंडर। इनको हम लोगों ने देखा है कि किस तरीके का इन्होंने रोल प्ले किया था। दादा नमस्कार।
नमस्कार सर।
तो नो एक्सक्यूजेज, मैं कंटिन्यू कर रहा हूँ।
जी जी जी।
तो RN काओ और पीसी अलेक्जेंडर और बी रमन के बारे में भी हमने कल देखा कि ये जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसर्स हैं, इनको गवर्नमेंट तनख्वाह देती है, हमारे आपके टैक्स मनी से तनख्वाह देती है। फिर भी ये जो अपने पॉलिटिकल मास्टर होते हैं, उनकी उंगलियों में नाच रहे होते हैं और देश का कितना नुकसान कर रहे होते हैं। मुझे कल उस किताब को पढ़ करके ये जानकर के बड़ा दुख हुआ कि पीसी अलेक्जेंडर को अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी की गवर्नमेंट 2002 में राष्ट्रपति कैंडिडेट बना रही थी, वो नहीं बन पाए, वो बात अलग है। लेकिन पीसी अलेक्जेंडर को अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी या बीजेपी ने राज्यसभा में भी भेजा था। ये अजीब सा तमाशा है। जो आदमी इंदिरा जी के साथ में उनका पर्सनल सेक्रेटरी रहा हो, प्राइवेट सेक्रेटरी रहा हो, प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी रहा हो, उसके बाद में राजीव का प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी रहा हो, उस आदमी को ये लोग इतना भाव दे रहे थे। इनको ये नहीं मालूम था कि हाँ, उसका पंजाब का जो खालिस्तान मूवमेंट था उसमें क्या रोल है। तो खैर, हम लोग मई तक के आसपास में आ गए थे। अब ऑपरेशन ब्लू स्टार की तैयारी हो रही है, तो ऑपरेशन ब्लू स्टार का देखते हैं क्या हुआ है क्या नहीं हुआ है। हर्षेज माउथ से हम लोग जो बुक पढ़ रहे हैं GBS सिद्धू साहब की, उसी बुक को रेफर कर रहे हैं। अगर आपको चाहिए होगा तो आप GBS सिद्धू की बुक पढ़ लीजिए और उसको देख करके देखिए कि क्या असलियत है और क्या हमको दिखाया गया है। तो दादा, आपकी परमिशन से हम इसको शेयर करते हैं।
सर ऐसा ना बोला, प्लीज शेयर सर। जी,
एक मिनट, लेट मी चेंज द सेटिंग ऑफ ये जो स्ट्रीम यार्ड की सेटिंग थोड़ा चेंज कर देता हूँ, बाजू में कर देता हूँ। हाँ ओके ठीक है।
एकदम ठीक है।
लेट मी स्टार्ट इट फ्रॉम पहले वाले से।
हाँ जी, द प्लानिंग स्टेज।
यहाँ से एक मिनट रुको।
जी,
ये है, दिस इज
ऑपरेशन ब्लू स्टार।
ऑपरेशन ब्लू स्टार।
Operation Bhideranwale, Khalistan 2, Operation 2 had a predetermined goal, a fixed time frame, and an operational plan. These three aspects have been explained in previous chapters. By 1984, the time had come to roll out the final solution. The essential ingredients for justifying strong action had converged or were made to converge by the end of May that year. A majority of the Indian population, an efficiently managed Indian press, observant foreign media and governments, through their missions in India, everyone appeared
एक मिनट।
everyone appeared to have been sufficiently convinced about the sincerity of Indira Gandhi's prolonged efforts to find a negotiated settlement to the Punjab problem. The carefully controlled chaos in Punjab could not be allowed to drift any further without the Prime Minister losing the confidence and votes of the majority community. According to the government figures, Bhideranwale inspired extremists had already killed 165 Hindus and Nirankaris in the 22 months since the launch of Dharam Yudh Morcha in August 1982. In addition, 39 Sikhs had been killed for opposing Bhideranwale. The total number of deaths in violent incidents, including the so-called police encounters, riots, and the accident at the railway level crossing, in which 34 supporters of the Morcha were killed, stood at 410, while the injured numbered 1,180. The Congress had already lost a state-level by-election in Uttar Pradesh, a stronghold of the party. Senior Akali Dal leaders, troubled by the PM's dilatory tactics, were feeling helpless and suffocated within the Golden Temple complex because of Bhideranwale's presence and his extremist activities. Clandestine smuggling of arms and ammunition and fortification of the Akal Takht by Major General Shahbeg Singh had started by March 1984 and were being conveniently overlooked by the security apparatus concerned. The next general elections were due by January 1985, and the Congress needed adequate time to consolidate the gains arising out of the planned final solution. Postponing it further would now be counterproductive. It was therefore time for Indira Gandhi to act decisively and live up to her by now somewhat dented image of a strong leader capable of taking the strongest possible action. The planning stage. The justification for such an action was provided by Harchand Singh Longwal on 23rd of May 1984, when he announced that starting 3rd June, no food grains would be allowed to move out of Punjab, and that Sikhs would not pay taxes and dues. With the Punjab police and paramilitary forces incapable of clearing the by now heavily armed Akal Takht complex, Army's involvement became inevitable. Consequently, the PM called Chief of the Army Staff, General A.S. Vaidya, on 25th of May to discuss the situation. She told him to keep the army ready to help the civilian authorities in Punjab, to which General Vaidya replied that anticipating such an eventuality, he had already ordered troop movements in Punjab. The initial plan, as explained by General Vaidya, was confined to siege and flushing out operations in the identified Gurudwaras, including the Golden Temple, by using adequate force to prevent movement of men, foodstuffs, and weapons into these Gurudwaras and force the extremists to surrender. Vaidya assured her that there would be maximum show of force and minimum use of that. He also assured her that during the operation, no damage would be caused to the targeted Gurudwara buildings, especially to the Golden Temple complex. According to Alexander, Indira Gandhi clearly defined the main objectives of the army operation by saying that the top priorities of the army would be to effectively curb terrorism and violence, provide security to the people, and restore normalcy in Punjab. The tasks involved flushing out the terrorists from the hideouts in certain gurdwaras, their arrest, and the seizure of their weapons. Our expectation was that the very presence of the army and the demonstration of its strength through flag marches would, by themselves, act as deterrents. Consequently, she felt that there would not be any need for the use of excess force by the army. Simultaneously, she also called moderate Akali Dal leaders to Delhi for secret talks on 26th of May with some of her cabinet colleagues. Expectedly, these talks also met with the predetermined fate, as shown in Chapter 4. After the failed 26th May talks with Akali Dal leaders, a meeting was held at the Cabinet Secretariat on the morning of 27th of May, which was attended by Cabinet Secretary Krishnamaswamy Rao Sahib, Senior Advisor RN Kao, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister PC Alexander, and General Vaidya. General Vaidya's 25th May plan was discussed in detail, and he was given the go-ahead to implement it. However, on General Vaidya's request, an urgent meeting was held at the Prime Minister's South Block office on 29th of May, where both RN Kao and PC Alexander were present. Vaidya mentioned that he had discussed the 25th May plan with Lieutenant General K. Sundarji, General Officer Commanding in Chief, Western Command, who was of the view that the plan could work only for the smaller Gurudwaras and not for the Golden Temple, as a prolonged siege of the Golden Temple would lead to a mass upsurge of Sikhs around the state who could then march towards the Golden Temple. Surprised at this sudden change in the plan, Indira Gandhi inquired about the implications of a stiff resistance by the terrorists holed up in the complex and their taking refuge in the inner sanctum of Harmandir Sahib. She also asked for a comparative analysis of the original plan with the alternative in terms of the number of casualties and the impact of the operations on serving Sikh Jawans, soldiers in the Indian Army.
दादा एक मिनट
जी जी जी
मैं अपने में लगा लेता हूँ ना कैसा चल रहा है, देखता रहूं जैसे कि बराबर आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है.
जी जी fully supportive of Lieutenant General Sundarji's suggestion for revising the original plan, General Vaidya said no time should be lost and the army needed to make a quick entry into the Golden Temple and take the terrorists by surprise. According to him, the operation would be carried out with such swiftness and surprise that it would not result in any damage to the temple buildings. The new plan would be executed so quickly that everything would be over by the time people came to realize what was happening. He also mentioned that the extremists within the temple complex would be given enough time to surrender before army action was initiated. He ruled out any adverse reactions among Sikh Jawans serving in the army. According to Alexander, Vaidya's explanation was so convincing that the Prime Minister felt the revised plan was the only option left to deal with the situation, and she gave her consent for its implementation as she respected the professional judgment of the generals. Keeping in mind the deliberations of the two meetings of 25th of May and 29th of May with General Vaidya, it is crucial to note that just a couple of months earlier, when the SFF-led heli-borne operation targeted only at the Langar Hall rooftop was being discussed with Nagrani in the presence of Kao, Indira Gandhi had asked pointed questions about the possible casualties involved and had rejected that operation outright, despite relatively modest estimates. Operation Blue Star was a much bigger operation, and the main target, the Akal Takht, was heavily fortified with about 100 fully trained and equipped Sikh extremists. Yet she approved the operation on the basis of superficial and unchallenged assurances. A few days after Operation Blue Star was launched, Sardar Swaran Singh was traveling in his personal car from Jalandhar to New Delhi. On the outskirts of Jalandhar, he saw a large contingent of army troops on the Grand Trunk Road heading northwards. It was possibly the movement of troops from the Meerut-based 9th Division, which was to reach Amritsar by 30th of May. The morning after he reached Delhi, he called Indira Gandhi's special assistant R.K. Dhawan and requested an urgent meeting with her, which was fixed for the same afternoon. Drawing her attention to the troop movement, he told the Prime Minister he was apprehensive that the army was possibly being deployed to clear the Golden Temple of extremists, including Bhideranwale. His advice to her was that she should not, under any circumstances, let the army enter the Golden Temple, as it could have serious repercussions for Punjab and the country as a whole. Expressing surprise, she said, "Sardar Sahib, how can you imagine that I would commit such a mistake?" She then became pensive and said she knew that sooner or later she would be killed by Sikh militants. She was not worried about that, but did not know what would happen to her children after her death. These were the same words she had spoken during a meeting at 1 Akbar Road in April 1984 with Kao and Nagrani when she overruled the SFF commando operation. Perhaps it was her way of expressing her helplessness. Incidentally, Zail Singh met Indira Gandhi on or after 29th of May, by which she had already given her approval to the revised plan as suggested by Lieutenant General Sundarji. However, Zail Singh returned fully reassured, but remained so only till he witnessed the ferocity of the action taken in the form of Operation Blue Star. On 30th of May, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi met President Zail Singh, who by virtue of his position as Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Armed Forces should have been taken into confidence, if not consulted, about the planned army operation at the Golden Temple. She spent over an hour discussing with him the new formula for reaching an agreement with the Akalis. This option had already been closed on 29th of May when the army was given the go-ahead to implement the revised plan for the operation. It meant that the person who had originally planned Operation Bhideranwale Khalistan, Operations 1 and Operation 2 for furthering the prospects of the Congress could no longer be trusted with a decision to use the army to flush out Bhideranwale and other extremists from the Golden Temple complex. Maybe she did not want to hear no from the
Commander-in-Chief.
Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Armed Forces for an army operation that she had already approved. The Harmandir Sahib. The foundation stone of Harmandir Sahib, also known as Darbar Sahib, was laid in AD 1588 as per personal request from the 5th Sikh Guru Arjan Dev, AD 1563 to 1604, by a pious Muslim saint of his time, Mian Mir Muhammad of Lahore. The construction was completed in 1601. Meanwhile, the Adi Granth was compiled under Guru Arjan's supervision. On its compilation, the Granth Sahib was installed for the first time in Harmandir Sahib in 1604. It was due to his insistence on retaining one particular hymn in the Granth Sahib and subsequently due to his refusal to embrace Islam that Guru Arjan was martyred at Lahore in 1604 under the orders from the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. Incidentally, Operation Blue Star was launched on the day Sikh pilgrims had gathered in the Golden Temple complex that year to mark the anniversary of Guru Arjan's martyrdom. In the 18th century, Harmandir Sahib was desecrated a number of times, but the three better remembered cases of desecration are those of 1737, 1757, and 1762. In 1737, the Mughal governor of Lahore ordered the arrest and execution of Bhai Mani Singh, the custodian of Harmandir. Musa Khan Massa Ranghar, who was appointed administrator of Amritsar, started using Harmandir as a place of entertainment by getting dancing girls to perform there. In August 1740, two Sikhs entered Harmandir under the guise of tax collectors and beheaded Massa Ranghar. In April 1757, Ahmad Shah Abdali, Durrani raided northern India for the fourth time. While he was on his way back to Kabul from Delhi, taking with him young Hindu men and women as captives, a group of Sikhs led by 75-year-old Baba Deep Singh attacked Abdali's convoy near Kurukshetra and freed a large number of prisoners, also relieving Abdali's convoy of some of the valuables it was carrying. In retaliation, Harmandir's secret Sarovar pool was filled with filth and the entrails of slaughtered animals, including cows. After Abdali's return to Afghanistan, Baba Deep Singh marched towards Harmandir Sahib to liberate it and was joined by thousands of Sikhs along the way. On 13th of November 1757, he died fighting in an attempt to liberate Harmandir Sahib. In 1762, Ahmad Shah Abdali returned and blew up Harmandir Sahib with gunpowder and again filled its sacred Sarovar with filth and the entrails of slaughtered cows before returning to Afghanistan. In 1764, Baba Jassa Singh Ahluwalia defeated the local Afghan contingent in the Battle of Sirhind, collected donations, and rebuilt Harmandir Sahib. It came to be known as Swarn Mandir, Golden Temple, after some of its portions were plated with gold in AD 1830 from donations made by Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his family members. Maybe tonight. For several months, arms and ammunition had been reaching the Golden Temple complex, hidden in trucks carrying provisions for langar. The police seldom checked these trucks, reportedly under instructions from the authorities concerned. No follow-up action was taken when one such truck was intercepted and found carrying 10 guns and ammunition. Young Sikh militants were being imparted weapons training inside the temple complex by ex-servicemen under the overall supervision of Shahbeg Singh. Leaving the main Harmandir Sahib untouched, Shahbeg had started fortifying the vantage points of all buildings and structures within the Golden Temple complex and the surrounding private houses. Special attention was paid to the Akal Takht because of the presence of Bhideranwale and his armed men there. Every strategically significant building in the temple complex was fortified in a similar manner. 17 private houses surrounding the temple complex were in constant touch with Shahbeg Singh by means of wireless communication. For Operation Blue Star, troops from the Meerut-based 9th Division were ordered to reach Amritsar by 30th of May. It was commanded by Major General Kuldeep Singh Brar, who had a clean-shaven Sikh from the same Jat Gotra, subcaste of Brar, as Bhideranwale. Originally from Faridkot, the Brars are in turn a sub-clan of the Sidhus. After attending an important meeting in the afternoon of 2nd of June 1984, Kao returned to his office slightly late and looking despondent. One of his close confidants, named withheld on request, who was waiting for him in his office, asked him the reason behind this demeanor. Kao significantly remarked that for the last couple of years, he had been trying his best to stop things coming to such a pass, but could not succeed. When asked to elaborate his cryptic remarks, Kao told the confidant he would be well advised to listen to that night's All India Radio News broadcast to understand what he had just told him. The same night at 9:15 p.m., Indira Gandhi addressed the nation on the state-owned television and radio channels. She recounted details of the efforts made by a government to reach a peaceful settlement with the Akali leaders. Once again, she appealed to them not to go ahead with the agitation, which was supposed to begin on 3rd of June, and instead accept the peaceful settlement the government had offered. Let us join hands together and heal the wounds. Don't shed blood, shed hatred. She appealed to all Punjabis. Later that night, the government announced on All India Radio that the army had been called to support the civilian authorities in Punjab and that Lieutenant General Ranjit Singh Dayal, Chief of Staff, Western Command, would hold the key post of advisor security to the Governor of Punjab. The police and paramilitary forces would work under the overall command of the army. Also, Lieutenant General Dayal, assisted by Major General K.S. Brar, was put in the overall charge of the Golden Temple operation, codenamed Blue Star. Simultaneously, by the evening of 2nd of June, the army sealed the international border with Pakistan from Jammu and Kashmir to Sri Ganganagar in Rajasthan. At least 7 divisions of the army were deployed in various villages of Punjab. By evening, the media was gagged. Rail, road, and air services in Punjab were suspended and a 3-day curfew imposed in the whole of Punjab. On 2nd of June, Mark Tully met Bhideranwale for the last time. Tully found him not to his usual relaxed self, but somewhat tense. Always willing to give interviews to foreign correspondents, Bhideranwale said, "You will have to hurry up. I have got more important things to do." The next day, when the Times of India reporter Subhash Kirpekar met Bhideranwale and drew his attention to the deployment of the army, Bhideranwale said the army would also behave the way the CRPF and the BSF had been behaving in the past. When his attention was drawn towards the heavier deployment of the better equipped army, Bhideranwale said, "Sheep always outnumber lions, but one lion can take care of 1,000 sheep. He is not a Sikh who fears death, and he who fears death is not a Sikh." When Kirpekar asked General Sanjay Singh when he expected the army action to start, he replied, "Maybe tonight." The ignored stand. हाँ, ये मेजर जनरल पहले तो ये आर्मी में थे ना।
नहीं, वो तो ठीक है, लेकिन
बांग्लादेश वॉर के टाइम में यही ऑपरेशन पूरा कंडक्ट किए थे मेजर जनरल सावेक सिंह। इनको तो मालूम होगा कि वे कॉलीग्स होंगे, कुछ ना कुछ तो खबर आ ही गया होगा। या
मुझे लगता है
इंटेलिजेंस
मैडम ने ज्ञानी जैल सिंह को दबा के टाइट किया होगा कि तुम मत बोलना कहीं पर भी कुछ, ये तो बताया ही नहीं होगा उसको, नहीं तो बोलते था पिछले वाले लोग कि भाई आने वाले हैं, भाग जा।
जी। They ignored standard operating procedure. Lieutenant General S.K. Sinha, who was General Officer Commanding in Chief Western Command before Lieutenant General Sundarji took over. Judging from the deteriorating situation in Punjab, Lieutenant General Sinha had sensed that one day, in the not-so-distant future, the army might be called to flush out Sikh militants from Gurudwaras, especially the Golden Temple complex. To deal with such an eventuality, he devised a standard operating procedure which included the following steps. 1. The whole operation had to be carried out in as transparent a manner as possible, in the presence of some respectable local Sikh witnesses. 2. There should be live TV coverage. 3. The Golden Temple complex should be duly cordoned off to prevent entry or exit of unauthorized persons till the operation was over. 4. If the siege persisted, water and power supply should be cut off, followed by a public announcement to encourage voluntary surrender. 5. Keeping in view the sensitivity of about 80,000 Sikh soldiers, both officers and men, they should be taken into confidence and sensitized about the reasons behind the operation and the precautions being taken in carrying it out. 6. A temporary Gurudwara must be established outside the Golden Temple complex with continuous recitation of the Holy Scriptures. 7. Officers and Jawans involved in the operation should remove their shoes, cover their heads, and offer prayers at the temporary Gurudwara before entering the Golden Temple complex. 8. The operation should be carried out under the overall command of a senior Sikh army officer with a mix of Hindu and Sikh troops. Lieutenant General Sundarji did not follow this standard of operating procedure for reasons given at the end of this chapter. Lieutenant General Sinha was transferred to Army headquarters as Vice Chief of Army Staff towards the end of 1982. Being the senior-most Lieutenant General in the Indian Army, he was expected to take over as Chief of the Army Staff from General K.V. Krishna Rao upon the latter's retirement on July 1983. However, he was superseded by General A.S. Vaidya, 6 months junior to him, when the latter was appointed Chief of Army Staff on 31st of July 1983. Lieutenant General Sinha sought voluntary retirement and during the NDA government served as India's ambassador to Nepal and as governor of Assam and Jammu and Kashmir. During my meeting with the DGS R.T. Nagrani, as referred to in Chapter 8, he told me that the services of SSFF commandos were requisitioned.
सर यहाँ पर भी चल रहा है गड़बड़, मतलब क्यों उसको सिन्हा साहब को सुपरसीड करके एएस वैद्य को मारा था ना वहां पर टॉफिल में, 200,000 ने मार दिया था इसको बाद में.
जी जी.
अच्छा, तो he trusted a Marathi over a Bihari, ऐसा कुछ हुआ लगता है. He trusted.
हाँ. Requisitioned at short notice for Operation Blue Star. To help prepare the commandos for the assignment, he had asked the help of the same civilian employee of SFF who had performed the casing of the Golden Temple complex for the aborted SFF-led heli-borne operation. This time, this employee stayed in the temple complex for a couple of days and prepared a detailed sketch of it with special reference to the Akal Takht, noting the most suitable points from where SSF commandos could enter with the least possible casualties. For the Akal Takht, he was asked to show the exact number and placement of gun positions and the floor plan, including the approach route to Bhideranwale's living quarters. These were handed over to Major General Brar by the commanding officer of SFF before Operation Blue Star was launched. Nagrani also told me that the commanding officer of the SFF unit had specifically advised Major General Brar that in view of the heavily armed and guarded approach to the Akal Takht, an attack from the front would not be wise. Therefore, it would be better to blast some portion of the rear of the Akal Takht. Touching the narrow lane between the temple complex and create a small hole to let the commandos enter the living quarters of Bhideranwale and other areas of the Akal Takht. It was even possible to grab Bhideranwale and his men alive with the careful use of some stun flash grenades, which disorient the targeted persons for some time. In addition to a high degree of training in the use of sophisticated techniques and weapons, stealth and surprise are the essential components of any commando operation. This plan was, however, ruled out by the army top brass on the grounds that no damage to the Akal Takht was acceptable. This can be contrasted with the actual damage that was done to the Akal Takht. Rather than let the SFF and para-commandos enter the Akal Takht building by creating a man-sized opening, a type of operation for which they actually trained, Bra eventually made them sitting ducks in the open courtyard in full view of Sanjay Singh, who had planned machine gun positions to defend the Akal Takht. On 3rd of June, morning curfew was relaxed in Amritsar for a couple of hours to allow pilgrims to enter the Golden Temple to celebrate the martyrdom of Guru Arjan Dev. Taking advantage of this relaxation, about 200 Sikh extremists escaped from the Golden Temple. They were seen carrying wads of currency notes reportedly given to them by Bhideranwale. Dissent in the war room. Major General K.S. Brar called a meeting of civil and military officers on 3rd of June at 7 p.m. to brief them about Operation Blue Star. Also present at the meeting were some senior Punjab police officers, including the Superintendent of Police CID, Punjab, Pandit Harjit Singh, Deputy Commissioner of Amritsar, Ramchandar Singh, DIG BSF Amritsar, G.S. Pandar, DIG CRPF, N.K. Tiwari, and Assistant Director IB Amritsar, G.S. Aulak. Brar told them that the Akal Takht complex had been taken over by criminals and the Indian Army would retrieve the shrine from them through a surgical operation in no time. Reacting to this, Panda said that the persons holed up in the Akal Takht complex were no ordinary criminals, but about 100 fully armed and trained Jat Sikhs for whom there could be no bigger honor than to die protecting the Akal Takht complex. None of them, including Bhideranwale, would surrender. A better alternative would be to cut off water and electricity supply to the complex and starve the inmates for 8 to 10 days to weaken their will to fight and then attack if necessary. In the meanwhile, it could be ensured that innocent pilgrims trapped in the Golden Temple complex were induced to come out. In that case, the army would neutralize the militants with not more than 20 to 30 casualties from its ranks. Major General Brar, who didn't like Pandar's suggestion, said he was also a Jat Sikh and knew the Jat Sikh psychology well. In response, Pandar said, "Sir, don't mind me saying, but you don't look like a Jat Sikh. A Jat Sikh must have a beard on his face and turban over his head. Also, he should be born and brought up in a village like me. In view of that, I know their psychology much better. You can at best be considered a modified Jat Sikh." A furious Brar insisted on carrying out the surgical operation as planned. Pandar told Brar that in that case, he would like to get his orders in writing as to what was expected of him and his force, as he apprehended a judicial inquiry headed by a serving or retired Supreme Court judge later. In that context,
yes.
In that context, Pandar referred to the Hunter Commission appointed in October 1919 to inquire into the various aspects of the infamous Jallianwala Bagh located next door to the Golden Temple massacre of 13th of April 1919. At that point, Major General Brar lost his temper and thumped the table a few times, accusing Pandar of open mutiny and adding that for a soldier, there's not to reason why, there's but to do and die. Pandar responded with, "Sir, this must be true for the army, but police officers are trained to consider all available softer options before taking such a drastic action." After the meeting, Panda sent a report to the BSF headquarters in New Delhi, giving his views on Major General Brar's planned surgical operation as well as his own suggestions. Brar received a copy of that report from Delhi early in the morning of 4th of June, and he held a second meeting of the same officers at 10 a.m. that day. He asked Panda why he had sent a report to his headquarters, to which Panda replied that it was his duty to keep his bosses fully informed of the ground situation, and he would continue to do so in future too. Not liking that answer, Brar had Panda removed from the charge of DIG BSF Amritsar, made him proceed on 30 days leave, and had him dropped to his village in Ludhiana district under police escort. Brar also recommended.
ब्रार के पास अथॉरिटी थी कि वो डीआईजी को ट्रांसफर कर सकता है?
अरे इंदिरा गांधी के अंडर में कुछ भी हो सकता था।
हाँ, अच्छा, हाँ,
यही बात है। आप तो समझ रहे हैं ना, मैडम के अंडर में कुछ भी हो सकता था।
आगे पढ़ो और भयंकर है।
हाँ जी, Brar also recommended Pandhar's summary dismissal from service under Article 311 of the Indian Constitution. The case reached the PMO. Someone pointed out that such an action could lead Pandar to join the Akali Dal, and he couldn't be a pliant member either. Sahi bola hai. The state, CID and CBI were asked to collect evidence in order to lodge a corruption. देखिए, a corruption.
ये तो सबसे बड़ा इनके पास
केस अगेंस्ट हिम।
पूछना पूछा है क्या? और नौकरी के टाइम में कुछ ना कुछ तो गलती की होगी ना भाई ने। बीबी के नाम पे जमीन है क्या, रिश्तेदारों के नाम पे जमीन है क्या, पकड़ के रगड़ दो उसको बस।
Case against him. His house in his village and his government flat in New Delhi was searched, and his entire service record from the day he joined the Indian Police Service was screened, as nothing incriminating was found against him. He was repatriated to his cadre, Manipur, in early 1985. In due course, he became Director General of Police, Manipur, and finally retired honorably as Director General, Bureau of Police Research and Development on 30th of April 1998 with the additional charge of the National Security Guard.
This is the price an upright officer
pays
Yes.
Pandha laments that despite promises made in the Akali Dal's election manifesto during the 1997 state elections of appointing a commission to go into the truth behind Operation Blue Star, no such action was taken by them, even though the Akali Dal was in power in Punjab from 1997 to 2002, and then from 2007 to 2017.
इसीलिए मैं कल भी पूछ रहा था, आज भी पूछ रहा हूं, आई थिंक अकाली दल वाज आल्सो इन लूप, क्योंकि एक जगह पे ये लिख रहे हैं गुरचरण सिंह चोरा मुख्यमंत्री बनना चाह रहे थे ना, दैट्स व्हाई ही फैसिलिटेटेड जरनैल सिंह भिंडरांवाले टू कम टू द अकाल तख्त। तो
जी वो कल ही परसों पढ़ रहे थे, कल ही पढ़ रहे थे हम लोग।
हाँ,
कल ही पढ़ रहे।
कुछ ना कुछ तो था, अदरवाइज अकाली जब वापस आए गवर्नमेंट में थे, दे वुड हैव ऑर्डर्ड एन इंक्वायरी इनटू ऑपरेशन ब्लू स्टार ना, क्या था क्या
Definitely. The operation begins. On the night of 3rd of June, the army surrounded 37 gurudwaras in Punjab to flush out suspected Sikh militants hiding there. Other than at Gurudwara Dukh Nivaran in Patiala, the army was met with hardly any resistance, as was the case with the Golden Temple.
Patiala एक याद आ रहा है मेरे को, जब मैं 4 जून को पंजाब नेशनल बैंक का इंटरव्यू देने जा रहा था,
जी
गाजियाबाद में था वो इंटरव्यू, तो हमने न्यूज़पेपर में पढ़ा था कि रात को आर्मी वहां पे घुस गई 4 जून को, थर्ड की नाइट में घुस गई थी ना वहां पे, थर्ड का नाइट में।
हाँ। As was the case with the Golden Temple, the Patiala Operation 2 was commanded by a clean-shaven Sikh, Major General Zail Singh. According to the army's official version, 20 persons were killed in that operation, but doctors of the government Rajendra Hospital, Patiala, were reportedly of the view that at least 56 had died. By the night of 4th of June, practically all gurudwaras outside Amritsar were cleared of militants, and the army had arrested most of them and confiscated their weapons. However, the army was disappointed by the small number of militants they had captured or killed in those gurudwaras. Either there was not a large number of militants in the first place, or they had already escaped. On 4th of June, announcements were made over loudspeakers asking pilgrims inside the Golden Temple to leave the premises and the extremists to surrender their weapons. But in the din and confusion that prevailed in the hostel complex of the temple, these announcements were not clearly audible. Only 129 persons came out of the temple area in the first lot. With no militant willing to surrender, army found itself suddenly faced with a situation that it had not anticipated and for which, therefore, it had not been prepared. Thereafter, the army began bombarding the Ramghadiya Banga, the overhead water tank, and other positions. After destroying the outer defenses, the army moved tanks and armed personnel carriers onto the road separating the main temple complex and the Guru Ram Das Sarai. Teja Singh, Samundri Hall, and Guru Nanak Niwas. Longwal and the SGPC chairman GS Tora was still in the SGPC office area of Teja Singh Samundri Hall, but Badal had left for his village. In view of his known proximity to Bhideranwale, Tora felt he might be able to convince him to surrender. Therefore, soon after the firing stopped on the morning of 4th of June, Tora went to the Akal Takht, obviously with the knowledge and approval of the authorities concerned, to meet Bhideranwale. His advice was spurned by Bhideranwale, who accused Tora of being Indira Gandhi's agent. Tora and the authorities concerned should have known that by then Bhideranwale had talked himself into a position from where abject surrender before the army was unthinkable. He could not have lived with that humiliation for the rest of his life. He would rather die fighting and become a part of Sikh folklore as a martyr who gave his life to defend the Harmandir Sahib complex. The same night, that is 4th of June, foreign and Indian journalists working for foreign media were made to leave Punjab. However, Brahma Chalani, a young Indian reporter working for Associated Press, managed to stay on as he arrived in Amritsar that very day, and his name did not figure in the police list of journalists present in Amritsar.
अभी वो टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में चेन्नई का एक्सपर्ट बन गया ना ये बर्माशिला में.
The main army action at the Golden Temple commenced on 5th of June 1984. In his address to his troops before they were ordered to enter the Golden Temple, Major General Brar identified Bhideranwale as the enemy who had taken control of the Golden Temple complex, which now had to be wrested out of his control. They were also told that while doing so, they must not fire either at the Harmandir Sahib or the Akal Takht without direct orders. The operation was launched at around 10 p.m. simultaneously from two sides, and the fighting that ensued continued till 7:30 a.m. the next day. In a separate operation the same evening, the BSF and CRPF attacked militants hiding in Hotel Temple View and Brahm Bhuta Akhada, respectively, on the south west fringes of the temple complex. By 10 p.m., both these buildings were under the forces' control. One of the tasks assigned to Lieutenant General Sundarji by the government was to prevent internecine fighting between the two major groups, Bhideranwale's group living in the Akal Takht and the moderate group of Akali Dal leaders headed by Harchand Singh Longowal living in Teja Singh Samundri's hall and the adjacent hostel complexes. It was decided to segregate the two areas and clear the hostel cum SGPC office complex comprising Guru Ramdas Sarai, Teja Singh Samundri Hall and Guru Nanak Niwas of the inmates simultaneously with the clearance of buildings in the temple complex, including the Akal Takht. Most of the pilgrims and supporters of the Akali Morcha and Akali Dal leaders had taken refuge in the hostel complex, where water and electricity connections had been cut. To allow the troops to enter the hostel complex, its strong southern gate had to be broken with the help of tanks. The army entered Teja Singh Samundri Hall at about 1 a.m. on 6th of June. Both Longowal and Gurcharan Singh Tora, along with some other functionaries of the SGPC, were asked to stay put in the office room. One of the persons who surrendered was Harminder Singh Sandhu, General Secretary of the All India Sikh Students Federation and a suspected Indian intelligence agent, who was reportedly sent by Bhideranwale to tell Longowal not to surrender, but could not or did not want to return. According to SGPC Secretary Bhan Singh, one of the survivors of the operation who was present in the complex, there were 250 other persons in Teja Singh Samundri Hall who were asked to come out and sit in the courtyard of Guru Ramdas Hostel. Some extremists threw grenades on them to stop them from surrendering. In the morning, about 70 dead bodies were found in the compound, including those of children and women. Though the central government white paper issued in July 1984 admitted that 70 people, including 30 women and 5 children, died in that incident, the blame for it was put entirely on the militants. According to Bhan Singh, the survivors were made to sit in the courtyard of Guru Ramdas Sarai without food, drink, or medical aid till the curfew was lifted the next evening. Bhan Singh also told Khushwant Singh that he saw about 35 Sikhs brought out from the Teja Singh Samundri Hall, made to line up with the hands raised above their heads and shot dead by the army.
ये सही है.
ये तो जो लिख रहे हैं वही बता पाएंगे.
भान सिंह बोल रहा है ना. भान सिंह को कितना रिलाई कर रहे हैं. खुशवंत सिंह, भान सिंह ने खुशवंत सिंह को बोला था भाई. हाँ.
The Kumaur regiment also entered Guru Ramdas Sarai at the same time and ordered everyone to come out. According to one eyewitness, as quoted by Mark Tully and Satish Jacob in Amritsar, Mrs. Gandhi's last battle, early in the morning of 6 June, all the pilgrims were taken into the courtyard and the men were separated from the women. The men were asked to take off their turbans, using which their hands were tied behind their backs. In addition, about 150 persons were taken out of the basement and asked to hold up their hands and shot after 15 minutes. The persons from the basement were Bangladeshi Muslims whom the Pakistan government had refused to accept. According to a letter written to President Zail Singh by an elder of a village, a few of whose residents were locked in room 61 of Guru Ramdas Sarai, about 60 pilgrims were locked up in that room during the hot and sultry night between 5th of June and 6th of June. The only door and all windows of this room were shut. When the door of the room was opened at 8 a.m. on 6th of June, 55 of the 60 pilgrims had died. The 5 survivors were arrested by the army and taken away to interrogation camps. Among the pilgrims who surrendered was a 19-year-old school teacher, Ranbir Kaur, who was staying in room number 141 of the Guru Ramdas Sarai with a husband and 12 children from a religious school she helped to run. She later told Mark Tolley that she did not hear any appeals by the army to surrender or come out of the hostel. She thought they were safer inside and that the Indian army would not attack the temple. Based on the petition moved in the Supreme Court in September 1984 by a Delhi-based social worker, 22 children who were picked up from the temple that day and lodged in Ludhiana jail were released, but most of them were subsequently rearrested on the plea that they had to be interrogated further for obtaining information about their relatives who had probably been killed during the army operation. Ranbir Kaur was released at the end of August. She rejoined 3 of her children who had been released. But no one could tell her what had happened to the 9 other children. The hostel complex was eventually evacuated in the middle of the attack on the temple complex. Many innocent people were killed, many were injured, and many were wrongly arrested. It was the least credible part of Operation Blue Star. The tanks roll in. As a part of the clearing out process of the main temple complex, SFF commandos, 1 para commandos, and troops of 10 guards were deployed to attack the Akal Takht from the main entrance side of the complex. Despite the repeated attempts, they failed to make a dent in the Akal Takht defenses. In the process, the SFF and 1st para commandos suffered heavy casualties. Additional troops from 26th Madras and 9th Garhwal Rifles under the command of Brigadier A.K. Dewan made another attempt to enter the Akal Takht. They too did not succeed and suffered heavy casualties. At that point, Brigadier Dewan requested tank support. While permission from Delhi was awaited, Major General Brar made one more attempt to get his men into the Akal Takht with the help of the SKOT OT-64 armored personnel carrier. The plan was to drive the APC right up to the Akal Takht so that men from the mechanized infantry could get in under the cover of a wall. But the APC soon came under attack from RPG, rocket-propelled grenade launchers. One of the grenades found its mark and the APC was knocked off. Final clearance from New Delhi for the use of tanks came at about 7 a.m. on 6th of June. 80 Vijayanta tanks from the 16th Cavalry Regiment with their main 105 mm high explosive squash shell heads were deployed. By the time the operation was over, the tanks had fired about 80 shells, and the effect of the high explosive squash heads shells on the building and its inmates was devastating. In the process, much of the Akal Takht, the shrine according to the original orders, was to suffer as little damage as possible, was in shambles. There are conflicting views about the burning of the library, which had invaluable manuscripts of historical value, including copies of the Granth Sahib handwritten by some of the gurus. Some Sikhs believe the army deliberately set it on fire to destroy an important part of the Sikh cultural heritage. But according to the government white paper, the library caught fire accidentally in the exchange of fire. By late afternoon on 6th of June, the army was in control of the situation in both the complexes and curfew was lifted for 2 hours.
ये विकिपीडिया में रिकॉर्ड में है, बर्निंग ऑफ लाइब्रेरी के उसमें लिस्ट में ये भी है, इसको आर्मी चलाया था।
हम लोग देखे थे ना एक दिन। लाइब्रेरीज कहाँ जली थी ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड,
हाँ, उसमें ये भी है।
कहाँ जलाई गई थी, इसमें ये था. During that period, nearly 250 people who were trapped in the main temple complex rooms overlooking the parikrama had surrendered. After dealing with all the officials of the temple who had surrendered that day, the army once again turned its attention to the Akal Takht. The sniping from there had died down, but Major General Brar was not willing to risk losing any more lives by sending his men into the Akal Takht by daylight. He waited for dusk to fall before giving orders to his troops to storm the Akal Takht and shoot anyone who came in the way. There was no resistance from inside the building. Brar set a guard on it and decided to wait for daylight before starting a search of the premises. According to the army, it was during that search on the morning of 7th of June that the bodies of Bhideranwale, Shahbeg Singh, Amrik Singh, and Thara Singh were found in the basement. At about 4:30 a.m. on 7th of June, Prem Kumar, Special Secretary Home, who was continuously monitoring their action by telephone and wireless from Amritsar, telephoned PC Alexander to confirm the report that Bhideranwale was dead and his body, which was lying in the basement of the Akal Takht, had been identified. The Prime Minister was immediately informed. The question of casualties. According to an army officer who was on duty at the makeshift cremation area just outside the temple complex, Bhideranwale was cremated at 7:39 p.m. on 7th of June. A crowd of about 10,000 had gathered near the temple, but the army held them back. The bodies of Bhideranwale, Amrik Singh, and Thara Singh were brought to the pyre. Captain Bhardwaj, who was on duty there, insisted on lifting the sheet covering Bhideranwale's body to identify it. When he asked the policeman why the body was so badly battered, they told him that the extremists had broken his bones. There's, however, some confusion over the timing of Bhideranwale's creation because, as per the post-mortem report, the body was not brought into the mortuary until 7:30 p.m. on 7th of June and was not examined until 8 p.m. According to the post-mortem report, Bhideranwale was alleged to have died as a result of firearm injuries. There are doubts about the accuracy of the post-mortem reports. According to Shahbeg Singh's post-mortem, his body was brought to the mortuary until 9th June, and by then it was not possible to do a full post-mortem of it because of the decomposition and putrefaction. There's no record of his last rites. He might have been cremated with the other bodies found in the hostel and temple complexes. Dead bodies from the complex had been piled into garbage trucks and taken to the cremation ground. The government white paper published in July 1984 said the army lost 83 men, including 4 officers. 12 officers and 273 men were injured. The main casualties were suffered by the SFF and the 1 para commandos. The guards also suffered heavy casualties with 20 dead and 60 injured. The white paper said a total of 516 civilians and terrorists were killed and 592 apprehended. Brahmachalani in his story, based on information obtained from post-mortem reports and other sources, said that several inside the temple had been shot at close range with their hands tied behind their backs, and that around 1,200 had died, around double the official figure. The story was picked up by the London Times on 14th of June 1984. As a result, Chelani was charged with fanning sectarian hatred and later with sedition. Though interrogated by the police for 35 hours, he escaped arrest because of the Supreme Court's intervention. His passport was impounded and his press credentials not renewed. It was due to international pressure from a scathing editorial in the New York Times in October 1984 that the charges against him were dropped in September 1985 and his passport restored and credentials renewed. As per estimates,
आज वो जो है ना वहां पर क्या बोलते हैं, चेन्नई में भी एक भाई को अरेस्ट किया है इन लोगों ने।
अच्छा अच्छा
उसने सीजीआई के खिलाफ कुछ बोल दिया था किसी न्यूज चैनल में कि सीजीआई को
जी।
गन दे दो, जाकर के वहां पे मणिपुर की प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर देंगे। उस चक्कर में डीएमके के किसी वकील ने वहां पर एफआईआर कर दिया तमिलनाडु में, और वो अरेस्ट हो गया बेचारा।
As per estimates gleaned from intelligence and Sikh religious sources by the BBC's Satish Jacob, no less than 2,000 people were killed, including 300 army personnel. Another 800 and 900 army personnel were injured, many of them crippled for life. If the government had to come out with the real figures, then it would have shown that the operation was a disaster. Due to widely conflicting claims, the actual number of civilian casualties resulting from Operation Blue Star can only be determined by a competent commission of an inquiry appointed by the government. Contrary to the assurance given by General Vaidya to the Prime Minister, many cases of mutiny by Sikh soldiers were reported from different places. On 6th of June, 600 soldiers of the 9th Battalion of the Sikh Regiment mutinied in Sri Ganganagar in Rajasthan. Some managed to cross over to Pakistan. Most were rounded up by men of the Rajputana Rifles. A large-scale mutiny took place in the Sikh regimental center at Ramgarh, Bihar लिख रहा है अभी झारखंड में, where 1,461 soldiers, including 1,050 new recruits, stormed the armory, killing the commandant of the center, Brigadier S.C. Puri, and injuring 2 others before they set out for Amritsar. One half of them were engaged by army artillery at Sakteshgarh railway station in Uttar Pradesh.
ये सत्तेश्वर स्टेशन पे जो अभी डीजीपी थे ना, जो टीवी पे आते हैं, विक्रम सिंह
जी जी जी,
उस समय वो एसपी उन्होंने रोका था।
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा। Those who managed to escape were rounded up by the 21st Mechanized Infantry Regiment. The others engaged with the artillery and troops of the 20th Infantry Brigade, during which 35 soldiers from both sides were killed. There were 5 more smaller mutinies in different parts of India. A total of 55 mutineers were killed and 2,606 rounded up. Some senior retired army officers were of the view that the mutinies could have been prevented had the men been fully informed about the developments in Punjab. Lieutenant General Harbaksh Singh felt that to counter the soldiers' belief that the villages were under attack, the regimental center should have sent small parties of Sikh soldiers under the command of officers to Punjab to see for themselves what was actually happening on the ground and report it back to their colleagues. Lieutenant General S.K. Sinha said he would squarely blame the officer corps for the mutinies because they were apparently ignorant of what their men were thinking. Unfounded apprehension. One major justification for the progressively harsher and increasingly destructive measures adopted by the army as Operation Blue Star became prolonged was the apprehension that a mass upsurge of Sikhs from the rural areas might head towards the Golden Temple. Contrast this with the actual on-the-ground experience of Indian Express reporter Sanjay Suri on 7th of June, the day the death of Bhideranwale and destruction of the Akal Takht became public knowledge. That day, Sanjay Suri did not visit any ordinary place, but went straight to Bhideranwale's ancestral home in Road Village in Faridkot district. Soon after All India Radio announced the news of Bhideranwale's death, Suri wanted to personally check on rumors about a massive uprising in Road Village. While asking for directions on his way to Road, a young Sikh man offered to ferry him on the carrier of his bicycle and dropped him close to Bhideranwale's home. Suri saw a large number of Sikhs standing quietly outside. There wasn't a single non-Sikh among them. Everyone stood still and silent. Suri introduced himself with 2 family members as a reporter from the Indian Express. Within a couple of minutes, he was ushered into the house and offered a seat on the only piece of furniture, a charpoy in the room. He told the 2 family members the reason for his coming to Road. Suri describes what followed. One of the men came carrying a thali with food, roti, dal, pickle, and vegetables. The kind host, because that was what this man had become, asked me if I had eaten anything through the day. I said I hadn't. He probably figured I was more in the need of food than information, and in any case, he had no information to give. Nothing remotely like an armed rebellion had erupted. I was an alien Hindu when suspicions around alien Hindus in Punjab could have been at their peak, but I was offered rest, care, and a meal. Bhideranwale's family did not forget the age-old traditions of Punjab of welcoming a stranger, looking after him, making him feel at home. I found a better Punjab than the headlines in the papers I worked for had led me to expect. My gut told me, even if not all my brain, that if this is how I could be welcomed at Bhideranwale's house that day, Punjab would be all right. Incidentally, within a week of Operation Blue Star, I had visited my own village and a couple of other adjoining villages located at the other end of Punjab, bordering Sirsa in Haryana. I met a number of Sikhs and Hindus during that visit. In my view, Suri's description most accurately describes the prevailing mood of the Sikhs in the rural areas of Punjab at a time when the national and local press were busy maligning many of them as extremists who had nursed anti-national feelings, costs, and responsibility. What went wrong with Operation Blue Star? Basically, the army is not meant to conduct such an operation. Under normal circumstances, it was a job meant for the police and paramilitary forces, but these were not used when they could have completed the task with far less loss of life and property. By June 1984, the situation was much beyond the capacity to handle. As far as the actual operation was concerned, it was the case of a highly ambitious and proud General K. Sundarji nursing dreams of becoming a field marshal, trying to finish his job in a jiffy to please Indira Gandhi. In the process, he underestimated the capabilities, commitment, and religious fervor of an equally proud group of Jat Sikhs, well equipped and trained by a professional and battle-hardened general willing to sacrifice their lives to defend the Harmandir Sahib complex. Being too proud to admit that the faulty planning and execution resulted from their overconfidence, Sundarji and his juniors later tried to pin the blame on intelligence failure. However, their allegation of intelligence failure rings hollow for a couple of reasons. First, they had enough time and resources at their disposal to collect the requisite tactical intelligence and plan their operation based on it. If a single civilian employee of the SFF could do that job successfully on two previous occasions, the army, with its intelligence corps headed by Lieutenant General, had far superior resources at its command. Second, the commanding officer of the SFF had already advised Major General Brar against a full frontal assault on the Akal Takht in view of the positioning of the defenses. However, it appears that General Sundarji, in an inordinate hurry to prove his mettle in keeping with the promise made by General Vaidya to the Prime Minister. However, Sundarji could also have chosen to follow the standard operating procedure laid down by his predecessor, Lieutenant General S.K. Sinha. But Sundarji might have wanted... जी
इसको सुपरसीड किया था तो भी सुंदर जी को इतनी खुजली थी.
हाँ
वैद्य को तो बना दिया था ना, मतलब इस पढ़ के अगर वैद्य रिटायर हो जाएगा तो मैं फिर से बन जाऊंगा. इस वक्त मर रही होगी लगता है.
मैंने वो फील्ड मार्शल बनना चाह रहे थे ना.
तो
जितना लंबा
the present to have its personal stamp.
If Sundarji might have wanted, but Sundarji might have wanted the operation to have his personal stamp if he was going to take full credit for it. Also, the casualties would have been far less had the period of operation been carefully chosen. as was the case with the aborted SSF operation, which coincided with Baisakhi celebrations at the Golden Temple. Operation Blue Star was launched on the martyrdom day of Guru Arjan Dev, when a comparatively larger number of pilgrims visit the temple. Did the final solution, which came in the form of Operation Blue Star, generate the desired momentum with which the One Akbar Road group could build a successful campaign for the upcoming elections? It appeared so. The vengeance with which Bhideranwale's men were eliminated had brought a sense of great relief and satisfaction among a majority of voters. Indira Gandhi's image as a strong leader was restored, but many innocent civilians, including women and children, had to lose their lives in the process. Lieutenant General K. Sundarji did win the battle for Indira Gandhi, and in March 1986, he became the army chief on General Vaidya's retirement. But at what cost? It was a Pyrrhic victory. The development set in motion as a result of Operation Blue Star led to the loss of a popular prime minister at a time when the country needed her most. Though Operation 2 achieved its objective and the Congress led by Rajiv Gandhi won the November 1984 general elections with an overwhelming majority, Indira Gandhi was assassinated and an anti-Sikh pogrom followed, ensuring that the country, especially the Sikhs, paid a heavy price for no fault of theirs. Here, it would be relevant to examine the pressures on Indira Gandhi, which compelled her to approve Operation Blue Star, despite being cautioned by a trusted and senior former member of her cabinet, like RN Singh, not to take such a drastic step, and despite Kao's comparatively soft solutions, including a heli-borne commando operation. Available evidence points the finger at the hawkish Arun Nehru, the politically shrewd M.L. Fotedar, Rajiv Gandhi, who was under the influence, and Arun Singh, who had become a member of the One Akbar Road group by that time. Of course, even if we believe that Indira Gandhi was forced to take that decision by this lot, she cannot be absolved of the responsibility for what happened. It was she who had allowed extra constitutional entities to usurp her powers as the Prime Minister of the country, forcing her to take decisions which she reportedly did not like. The buck stopped with her, and she must be held responsible for all those decisions, even if taken under pressure from the One Akbar Road group. This was not the first or the last time that religious and sectarian divides in Indian society was or would be exploited by the ruling or opposition parties for political gains. Such exploitation will continue as long as the country does not have a well-informed and politically evolved electorate capable of seeing through such games and electing their representatives based purely on their past performance and of future potential to look after their interests. However, this was the only time that senior leaders of the ruling party, soon after winning an election, started planning their party's victory at the next elections 5 years away by first creating and then resolving a religious divide of gigantic proportions, that too one between Hindus and Sikhs, where there is a very thin, in some cases even blurred line dividing the two communities. One can only wish and pray that such a thing never happens again in a secular and democratic India, which prides itself in the values enshrined in Vedic Sanskrit phrase Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which views the entire earth as a family. This phrase is also engraved in the entrance hall of the Indian Parliament. It appears that the architects of Operation 2 were either totally oblivious of their Vedic heritage or could not care less about such values.
That's it. Finish. Operation Blue Star finish.
Yes.
बाप रे. उफ.
सब लोग चुप क्यों हो गए?
वो तो दोनों के दोनों म्यूट हैं, चुप क्या हो गए, म्यूट हैं, उनको अभी समझ में नहीं आया होगा कि क्या हो रहा है।
हम ही लोग आपस में बात करते हैं ना सर।
आप ही बोलो क्या बात करनी है, मैं तो इसको
सर?
पढ़ करके अब पूरा पूरा छांट के रखा था, अभी आपके साथ में दोबारा पढ़ा पूरा मैंने।
जी जी जी।
आई एम स्पीचलेस। मतलब
नहीं
द
देखिए, समरी यही है कि एक लेंदी प्लानिंग किस तरह किया जाता है, मतलब
नहीं, मैं ये
सॉल्यूशन।
बोल रहा हूँ कि ये जितने लोगों को तनख्वाह मिलती है, चाहे बरार हो चाहे सुंदर जी हो, इनको सिर्फ अपना करियर का पड़ा रहता है, उसके लिए 1000 लोग मर
हाँ
जाए
हाँ, मर जाए तो ये वही तो बोल रहा हूँ मैं। जो पॉलिटिशियन है उसका भी वही मतलब दिमागी सोच है, इन लोगों
वो
का
लोग
भी वही है।
वो तो अपने वोट के लिए करते हैं, पावर के लिए करते हैं, बट व्हाई द यू आर कंप्लिसिट विद देम।
अरे कंधे पे जो लगेगा,
दैट
क्या
आल्सो
बोलते हैं
व्हेन ही वाज ignored, once he was ignored ना, वैद्य को प्रमोट किया तो तेरे को तो पीछे रखा हुआ था, तो तू क्या को उंगली कर रहा था आगे जाके, मत करता।
तो और चाहिए ना मुझे, और चाहिए और चाहिए। चाहत का कोई अंत नहीं है, और बड़ा बनना है मुझे, और
Now
बड़ा
this is
बनना है।
coming from an ex raw officer's
माउथ
perspective। अभी सोचो आम
पर्सपेक्टिव
आदमी
एंड
क्या मालूम है हिंदुस्तान में क्या हो रहा था, क्या नहीं हो रहा होता, किस तरीके से कौन सी घटनाएं होती हैं। बाप रे। उफ।
सिंह साहब, मुझे तो लगता है ये सब निमित्त ही था।
गद्दी इतनी प्यारी है, लिखा डायरेक्टली वो कि जैसे इलेक्शन जीत जाते हैं अगले 5
साहब,
साल
मेरा आवाज आ रहा है?
शुरू कर देते हैं।
साफ आ रही है जी जी जी
मुझे लगता है ना, ये
जी।
एक
बोले
ये निमित्तम हो गया, निमित्त
निमित्त मात्रम।
निमित्त निमित्त बोलेगा तो यानी मेरा कहने का मतलब, आप सोचो यदि ये इंसिडेंट अगर नहीं हुआ होता, एक खालिस्तानी और दूसरा एलटीटी का, मुझे तो लगता है बीजेपी की क्या, मोदी क्या, कोई भी आने वाला नहीं था अभी तक ये माँ उसका बाद बेटा का राज अभी भी चलता था। ये अच्छा हो गया, चाहे अनफॉर्चुनेटली
ये बात
कितना
आप सही
हजार
बोल रहे
हमारे लोग।
हैं, ये बात सही बोल रहे हैं।
देखो, ये इतना होने के बाद भी उनका गलबा चल रहा है ना अभी भी,
हाँ
गांधी
हाँ
नाम
हाँ
से। तो आप हिसाब लगाओ, यदि अगर इंदिरा गांधी जिंदा होती
जी
और राजीव गांधी जिंदा होता, तो वो
जी।
बीजेपी क्या, वो कोई कोई वो नजदीक ही नहीं आ
कोई
सकता।
जेपी नजदीक नहीं आता।
कोई इंडियन पॉलिटिक्स में अभी तक नहीं आता था।
गिव मी
और हम
10
लोग
मिनट्स
है ना,
ब्रेक।
पाकिस्तान से भी
10
बदतर
मिनट्स
बन
ब्रेक।
जाता था।
मुझे 10
सिंह
मिनट
साहब कुछ
पाकिस्तान से
ब्रेक
बदतर
चाहिए।
बन जाता था हम लोग।
जी जी
मुझे 10 मिनट का ब्रेक चाहिए, मैं जा रहा हूँ, बाद में आता हूँ।
सुन लिया सर, मैं सुन लिया। तेजवीर भाई
ऐसा
बोलिए।
ये अच्छा हो गया। मुझे तो लगता है वो भगवान का कृपा है हम लोगों के ऊपर।
नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल।
सत श्री अकाल।
और बताइए
रमन
सर।
दादा नमस्ते।
नमस्ते
जी जी
नमस्ते।
प्रदीप भाई नमस्ते।
जी, उनके तरफ से
रमन
मेरा
दादा आप
नमस्ते।
बिल्कुल सही बोल रहे हो आप।
हाँ जी हाँ जी।
अगर ये वाला ब्लू स्टार नहीं हुआ होता और इंदिरा गांधी को नहीं मारा गया होता तो अपना वो उन्हीं का राज रहता, एक छत्र राज।
दूसरा वो एलटीटी भी, वो उसका बेटा को भी खत्म किया ना, वो भी एक अच्छा हो
हाँ,
गया।
अब जैसा कर्म
हाँ
आदमी
बिल्कुल।
करेगा वैसा ही फल भुगतेगा, और क्या। पूरा परिवार ही जो है इस तरह खत्म होते जा रहा है, फिर भी इन लोगों को लालच इतना पड़ा हुआ है, पता है क्या बोलो।
ये
जी बोलिए जी। ये किस चीज की आवाज आ रही है तेजवीर भाई?
एक्चुअली मैं ट्रैवल कर रहा हूँ।
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा, हाँ हाँ हाँ, नहीं ठीक
हाँ
है। आप
इसलिए
बोले थे, आप
वही
तो
बता।
बोले थे, हाँ जी। हाँ, आप तो बोले थे। आप गाड़ी चला रहे हो कि कोई दूसरा चला रहा है?
नहीं, गाड़ी तो ड्राइवर चला रहा है।
हाँ तब ठीक है, मैं इसीलिए पूछ रहा हूँ कि
हम्म,
फिर डिस्ट्रैक्शन
नहीं
होने
नहीं।
से फिर दिक्कत आएगी ना।
हम्म, तभी मैं बीच
पहुंच
में
कर
म्यूट कर रहा हूँ इसलिए।
अच्छा पहुंच कर बताना हम लोगों को।
जी दादा।
मेरा नंबर है ना आपके पास?
हाँ दादा, वो व्हाट्सएप में है सारे
अरे
नंबर।
व्हाट्सएप पे तो मतलब सब कहाँ नंबर सबका है क्या? थोड़ी है, सबका
हाँ,
नंबर थोड़ी है।
मेरे पास
मैं तो अलग
है
से
मेरे
दिया
पास।
था सबको, मैं तो सबको अलग से दिया।
हाँ है।
तो देखिए कितना बुरा चीज हुआ, कितने लोग मरे दोनों तरफ से, आर्मी वाले भी बेचारे मरे, अंदर के बच्चे, लेडीज, बेमतलब का जो है, इन लोग कैसे रोक के रखा उस आदमी को अंदर। ये बहुत पहले खत्म हो जाता ये मसला, होने ही नहीं दिया। तो ये आदमी भी जो है ट्रैप में फंसता गया, लास्टली देखिए क्या हुआ, कितना बुरा चीज हुआ।
दादा, आज का मीडिया का टाइम है, तो इधर से सारा कुछ अपना देर सवेर सबके साथ जाता है। लेकिन
जी
कुछ
जी जी।
फिर भी अपना नहीं मानते और फिर ट्रैप में फंस जाते हैं। जैसे अमृतपाल एक करंट की उदाहरण है, एग्जाम्पल है।
तो क्या बोलिए बोलिए, उनको ये बहाना मिल गया ना, वही बहाना लेकर ये चल रहा है।
अभी भी इतना फर्क नहीं हुआ, अभी भी हमारा सिस्टम वही हिसाब से चल रहा है।
हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
अभी ये मणिपुर के ही देखो ना, इतना
हाँ
छोटा स्टेट है, कितना महीने से चल रहे देखो, है क्या
कोई
करने के,
खबर
ये
नहीं।
लाखों की तादाद में हम लोग रहे, आर्मी बीर्मी बना के क्या करने के।
देखिए आर्मी को जितना बोला जाता है उतना ही करता है, यही तो दिक्कत है ना, जो ऑर्डर दिया जाता है उसको फॉलो करना,
तो
सही
वही
हो
मैं बोल
गलत
रहा
हो।
ना, किस काम के लिए रखा हुआ है आर्मी।
इसी काम
शर्म
के
आना
लिए कि
चाहिए,
जो
मालूम है इतना छोटा
आ,
स्टेट के अंदर हम लोग अभी तक कंट्रोल नहीं कर पाया
ये
बोलेगा तो।
पुलिस वाले ही कंट्रोल कर देते, सीआरपीएफ, बीएसएफ या दूसरे, इंडो टिबेटन बॉर्डर पुलिस है,
क्या करते हैं समझ में नहीं।
ये सब्सिडरी इंटेलिजेंस ब्यूरो है।
परसों हमारे उधर एक एक क्रिश्चियन के साथ मेरा थोड़ा तू तू मैं हो गया इस मुद्दे
हाँ
को
हाँ,
लेके।
इसमें क्रिश्चियन हिंदू का बात ही नहीं है, तो बदमाशी दूसरा है ना, इनको भड़का
तो
भड़का के सब। जी जी, उसके दिमाग में आप जो वीडियो दिखाए थे ना उस दिन, उसके दिमाग में ये डाला गया कि क्रिश्चियनों को
वो
जो
वो
सताया
बहुत
जाए,
जोर से
जबकि
चल रहा
उल्टा
है
है।
यार,
अरे जबकि
बहुत
उल्टा है, आप
जोर
क्यों
से
नहीं
चल रहा है,
बोले कि तुम लोगों ने तो किया है, शुरुआत कौन किया फिर?
बहुत जोर से चल रहा है। केरल में तो अभी
उनको
क्रिश्चियन
मौका
भी
मिल गया ना अभी।
क्रिश्चियन भी, मुस्लिम भी, हिंदू भी
हिंदू बेवकूफ हिंदू जो है वही बोलेगा तो
ये लोग
वहाँ के।
जगह जगह में डेली का मुफ्त ना, जगह जगह में आजकल मार्च निकाल रहे हैं। तो परसों
बात
क्या
तो
हो गया, एक क्रिश्चियन को मैं ऐसे ही पूछा,
जी।
तुम लोग क्या समझ के ये सब कर रहे हैं, अपने देश के अंदर हो रहे हैं ना, तुम लोग ऐसा कर रहे हैं कि जैसे कि दुश्मन के मुल्क में हो गया
हाँ हाँ
जैसा।
हो रहा है। हाँ हाँ हाँ।
तो बाद में बोलते हैं ये बीजेपी का काम है, ये आरएसएस का काम है।
हाँ हाँ।
तो बाद में मैं उसको बोला,
वहाँ कोई बीजेपी
चल
आरएसएस कोई नहीं है, इन लोग का तादाद ज्यादा है, पूरा चर्च कंट्रोल करता है। ये सब मालूम है
तो,
उनको, बदमाशी कर रहा है ना, उसको सब मालूम है।
तो मैं उसको पूछा, आरएसएस और बीजेपी कर रहे करके आपको कैसे मालूम है। बोलते हैं वो उधर वो लोग जब गया उधर, वो उधर का जो हिंदू है वो असली हिंदू नहीं है, वो लोग उधर का वनवासी लोग था। तो उन लोगों को ये लोग जाके बीजेपी और आरएसएस वाला जाके हिंदू बना दिया, और उसके
अरे
बाद
उसको
आरएसएस।
बोलिए ना थोड़ा विकिपीडिया ही पढ़े, उसमें तो दिया हुआ है कि ठीक है वनवासी था जो था तो हिंदू बना ना उन लोग। उसमें तो दिया हुआ है कि राजा, पहला राजा जो हिंदू बना वहाँ का, पहला राजा। उसके बाद तो बहुत राजा लोग आए, पहला राजा तो हिंदू बना।
तो बाद में मैं बोला अच्छा, मैं समझ गया। मैं बोला फिर वो जो क्रिश्चियन है वो क्या आसमान से टपका क्या?
हाँ हाँ
उसको मैं पूछा।
हाँ।
बोलता है वो क्रिश्चियन उधर वो ब्रिटिश का टाइम का कन्वर्टेड है। मैं
अच्छा,
बोला
और
अच्छा।
केरला का आप बोले कि आप भी मलयाली नहीं है, आप भी मलयाली नहीं है, आप भी जो है टपक गया है।
तो
आप
मैं
बोल
बोला
देते उसको।
अच्छा। तो मैं बोला तुम
आप
बोलते
कोई वासी नहीं थे, ये तो बेचारे वनवासी थे, आप तो कोई वासी नहीं है, कहीं के वासी नहीं है, आप चर्च के वासी है। बहुत गलत, मतलब देखिए कितना मतलब हेट्रेड इन लोगों के दिमाग में घुसाया जाता है, इनकरेक्ट इंफॉर्मेशन। कोई किताब खोल के पढ़ता नहीं है, कोई
दादा
इंटरनेट में सर्च नहीं करता कि एक्चुअली
वो
क्या
वासी,
हुआ। जी
दादा
जी जी
वासी तो हैं लेकिन वो
जी जी
टपकवासी
जी,
हैं।
सुन रहा हूँ जी।
हाँ,
हाँ हाँ
टपकवासी
हाँ
हैं वो।
हाँ जी हाँ जी।
तो मैं क्या बोला मालूम है उसको? मैं बोला अभी देखो आप ही स्वयं इसको स्वीकार कर रहे हैं कि ब्रिटिश का टाइम में उधर वो लोगों को क्रिश्चियन बनाया करके। बोलते हैं
जी
हाँ हाँ। मैं बोला बेवकूफ
ये
इंसान, ऐसे ही
गलत
मैं
किया
बोला।
ना।
नहीं, मैं इसको ऐसे ही बोला, बेवकूफ इंसान, तुमको सोचना चाहिए कि वो लोग जो वनवासी आप जो बोल रहे हैं वो उधर का वो लोग जेन्युइन लोग है। उनको अगर आरएसएस वाला या बीजेपी वाला जाके अगर हिंदू बनाया तो भी हमारे देश के अंदर ही हम लोगों ने किया ना। हम लोग कोई
जी
विदेश से
जी
आके नहीं किया, हमारे आदमियों को किया। ठीक है। लेकिन ब्रिटिश किधर से आके किया? दूसरे एक कॉन्टिनेंटल से आके हमारे देश में आके किया। तुमको उसमें कोई फिक्र नहीं है?
क्या
आरएसएस
बोल रहे हैं।
बीजेपी अगर उनको हिंदू बनाया तो उनका अपना एक ही राज्य के लोगों को बनाया, एक ही मुल्क के लोग है वो लोग। तो वो तो उसमें जस्टिफाई कर सकते हैं ना हम लोग। अगर
जी
उनको अगर कोई रिलीजन नहीं था, कुछ नहीं था, तो वो आज आरएसएस वाला या बीजेपी जाके उनको हिंदू बना दिया। वैसा भी हम लोगों का वो नेचुरली हिंदू है हम लोग। वनवासी होने दे, कोई भी होने दे। मैं
हाँ,
बोला
कोई
मैं भी
फर्क
वन
नहीं पड़ता, सब
हाँ, मैं भी
हम
वनवासी
लोग
है। मैं बोला मैं भी
सब
वनवासी है।
जी जी जी, हम लोग
मैं
सब
बोला
हैं
मैं भी
वनवासी।
वनवासी है। वनवास सब लोग वनवासी है, भारत के अंदर जितना भी जेन्युइन लोग है सब वनवासी है। मैं बोला
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने।
समझा। लेकिन तुम स्वयं बोलते हो बाकी लोगों को ब्रिटिश का टाइम में क्रिश्चियन बनाया करके। तो मैं बोला तुम अभी इसका ये ढूंढो। मैं बोला इसमें किस किस बात में वजन है? मैं बोला यूरोपियन कॉन्टिनेंटल से आके हमारे ही वनवासियों को उनको अगर क्रिश्चियन वो लोग ने बनाया, और आरएसएस बीजेपी वाला जो भारत के अंदर का ही लोग है, इधर के ही भूमि पुत्र है लोग सब,
जी जी
तो
जी।
उनको अगर हिंदू बनाया तो किस में सच्चाई है तुम बोलो? और वैसा भी मैं उसको पूछा तुमको मणिपुर का हिस्ट्री मालूम है? बोलते है क्या हिस्ट्री मालूम पड़ने का है? तो वो आरएसएस वाला उधर बीजेपी वाला जाके क्रिश्चियनों को मारता है, हमारा गिरजाघर को तबाह करता है। मैं फिर से उसको मैं बोला बेवकूफ इंसान, तुम एक ही तरफ से तुम मीडिया पढ़ रहे है, इसके लिए तेरे को ऐसा वो बात आ रहा है। और
जी
ज्यादातर
जी
तेरा मीडिया में मैं सुना तुम्हारे चर्च से निकलता है। इंडिपेंडेंट कोई मीडिया है तुम लोग पढ़ता भी नहीं है, तुम लोग को पढ़ने का शौक भी नहीं है। और अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारा केरल के अंदर कोई इंडिपेंडेंट मीडिया चलता भी नहीं। और लोगों को तो हिंदी न्यूज का कुछ भी एबीसीडी मालूम नहीं।
जी जी, ये
इंग्लिश
भी
न्यूज तो फुल्ली
हाँ
बायस है।
जी
इंग्लिश न्यूज फुल्ली बायस है। मैं जो
जी
नोट
जी
किया
जी जी
बहुत कम, बहुत कम इंग्लिश न्यूज में थोड़ा बहुत न्यूट्रल बताता है, ज्यादातर बायस है। बाद में मेरे को बोलता है तुम लोग सब आरएसएस वाला ऐसे है वैसे है करके,
हाँ,
बहुत
सब
झगड़ा हो गया
आरएसएस
हमारा।
में। तो आप बोले
बहुत झगड़ा।
मेरे पे लिखा हुआ है क्या सर पे, मैं आरएसएस वाला हूँ?
मैं इसको
कैसा?
बोला उधर पॉपुलेशन में ज्यादा ये लोग है, ये मैती लोग जिसको तुम लोग हिंदू बोलते हैं या हिंदू है, उनका मुश्किल से कुछ 10% जमीन है बोलते हैं उधर।
हाँ हाँ हाँ, सबको तो भगा
10%,
भगा के जो लोग कब्जा कर
हाँ,
दिया ना।
वो 10% जमीन के अंदर उसमें बाकी लोगों को भी शेयर है। उधर का कानून ऐसा है,
हाँ,
वो जो
उनका शेयर
10%
नहीं,
जो,
वो कहीं
हाँ
जा नहीं सकते हैं, दूसरा जगह वो नहीं जा
हाँ,
सकते हैं, बाहर का
वो
आदमी आ सकता है।
बाकी जो 90% जगह है उधर जो क्रिश्चियन रहता है, ये कुकी और ये नागा वगैरह, वो ज्यादातर
हाँ, वो लोग
क्रिश्चियन है
आके
बोलते हैं
कब्जा
वो
कर,
लोग।
ये
हाँ,
हाँ हाँ हाँ,
उनको 90% जमीन उधर है, उधर ये मैती जा नहीं सकते। और मैती का जो 10% जगह है उधर वो कोई भी आके रह सकते हैं बोलते हैं।
हाँ हाँ, यही है, यही रूल है। हाँ जी।
तो मैं बोला यार तुम लोग किधर से ये सब न्यूज लेके आता, तुमको ये सब मालूम नहीं तो फिर क्यों ऐसा करता है। मैं बोला इसको तुमको मैं इसके लिए बार बार बोल रहा हूँ, तुम लोग ये संडे तुम्हारा चर्च में मास होने के बाद तुम्हारा फादर जो सिखाता है ना, वही
जी
तुम्हारे दिमाग में बैठा हुआ है। तुम लोग अपना तरफ से भी थोड़ा इंडिपेंडेंट न्यूज को पढ़ो ना यार। कुछ नहीं देखते, कुछ नहीं सुनते, ऐसे ही बकते रहता है। मैं बोला तुमको क्या बोलने का यार, तुम लोग तो क्रिश्चियन है, मुश्किल नहीं है। मुझे तो और भी दुख आता है जब केरल में हिंदू लोग
हाँ,
भी वो ऐसे कर रहे करके।
जी जी जी,
हिंदू लोग भी बहुत से लोग जगह जगह में औरत मर्द सब वो प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं। परसों क्या हो गया मालूम है?
जी।
परसों मुस्लिम लीग वाला, ये जो वही
हम्म
मुस्लिम लीग वाला जो पाकिस्तान बना है,
हाँ हाँ
वो लोग केरल के अंदर है ना अभी। तो
हम्म,
वो लोग क्या किया मालूम है, वो लोग थोड़ा डाइल्यूट होके, डाइल्यूट बोलेगा तो ये लोग मिक्स होके इसके अंदर घुस
हम्म,
गया ज्यादातर
हाँ,
ये
समझ गया।
एस टी पी आई में, एसटीपीआई
हम्म
में,
हम्म,
समझा?
हाँ जी,
तो हाँ, तो मुस्लिम लीग सिर्फ नाम के लिए हो गया, उसका अंदर का जितना भी लोग है स्पेशली उनका यूथ जो है सब एसटीपी में
जी,
चला गया।
हम्म,
तो उसके बाद ये पीएफआई का कुछ लीडरों को गिरफ्तारी किया ना अभी कुछ महीना
जी
पहले।
जी
तो ये लोग ने क्या किया मालूम है, एक षड्यंत्र करके ये लोग ने फिर से ये मुस्लिम लीग पार्टी को थोड़ा और एक्टिव किया।
जी
समझा? यानी
जी जी,
जब पीएफआई को उनका लीडरों को पकड़ दकड़ हुआ करके ये लोग ने फिर जितना भी लोग मुस्लिम लीग से एसटीपी में चला गया था वो फिर वापस मुस्लिम लीग में आ गया। ठीक है? तो
जी
दिन में ये लोग मुस्लिम लीग है और रात को ये लोग एसटीपीआई है, ऐसे चल रहा
जी
है।
जी जी जी,
और
ज्यादा
उसका
अल्तकैया कर रहे हैं।
हाँ, उसका अंदर का बहुत से लोग कांग्रेस पार्टी के अंदर भी इन्फिल्ट्रेट किया ले, और वामपंथी दल के अंदर भी बहुत है।
जी।
सबका सब एसटीपीआई है, सिर्फ नाम के लिए अलग अलग
नहीं,
नाम से घूम रहे हैं।
वामपंथी तो इनको शरण देते हैं ना।
हाँ, लेकिन वो दिन में है।
हाँ
वामपंथी
हाँ
के अंदर जितना भी ये लोग दिन में वामपंथी है, रात को एसटीपीआई है।
हाँ,
तो ये लोग ने परसों एक बहुत बड़ा रैली निकाला, ये मुस्लिम लीग का यूथ विंग ने।
वही एसडीपीआई।
नहीं, एसटीपी अलग
अच्छा,
है, अलग है,
हाँ,
मुस्लिम
नहीं
लीग
अलग
अलग है।
है, लेकिन आदमी तो सब वही है ना।
हाँ, आदमी वही सब है, जैसे कि आईएसआईएस और अलकायदा, लश्कर तैयबा, इनका नाम में फर्क है, एम तो एक ही
हाँ,
है, काफरों को खत्म
एम एक
करना।
ही है।
एम एक ही है, काफरों को खत्म करना या गजवा हिंद करना, बस यही है। ये इंडिया इंडिया साहब अभी है उधर या सिंह साहब
नहीं, सब हैं।
है एक्टिव हो
हाँ
गया?
जी, हैं। हाँ जी, हाँ
सिंह
जी,
साहब
सिंह साहब हैं।
सिंह साहब को मैं एक लिंक देगा, वो परसों वो लोग ने केरल के अंदर ये रैली निकाला, उसमें का इनका जो नाराबाजी है, मैं उसका थोड़ा आपको दिखाएगा अभी क्या बोल रहा था वो लोग।
सर हम लोग खत्म कर दें सर, सिंह साहब, खत्म कर दें हम लोग।
हाँ हाँ, इसको खत्म कर देते हैं, फिर बाद में देखते हैं क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं। कल हम लोग दिल्ली का जो वो सिख राय हुआ, सिख प्रोग्राम हुआ था ना, कल उसको कवर करेंगे फिर, अगर
जी,
टाइम मिला
जी,
तो, नहीं तो मंडे करेंगे,
जी,
देखेंगे क्या होता है। कल तो
जी,
हमारे डोमोरजिया साहब की स्ट्रीम रहती है ना, वो लंबा खींच देते हैं,
जी, जी, जी।
तो
तो
इसको बंद कर
व्यूअर्स
दो।
को नमस्कार। हाँ, व्यूअर्स को नमस्कार, हमारी तरफ से शुभकामनाएं। और यही है, आप लोगों को यदि आप ये स्ट्रीम हमारे देख रहे हैं, आपको कंटेंट अच्छा लग रहा है, तो कृपया आप लोग कमेंट करें, लाइक करें, सब्सक्राइब करें, ताकि हम आगे और प्रेरित होकर आगे इस तरह का कंटेंट आपको देते रहें। और नेक्स्ट स्ट्रीम में हम फिर बताएंगे, इसको आगे बढ़ाते रहेंगे, ताकि आपके नॉलेज में ये सब चीज़ें आए जो नॉर्मली आता नहीं है कहीं बाहर। तो सिंह साहब, आपको भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद फॉर
सब
शेयरिंग द
लोगों को
कंटेंट विद
नमस्कार,
अस।
मिलते हैं अगली स्ट्रीम में फिर से,
जी, जी,
तब
जी।
तक के लिए जय हिंद, भारत माता की जय, वंदे मातरम।
जय हिंद, वंदे मातरम, भारत माता की जय।